Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and welcome to another episode of A Day Late and a Dollar Short. I'll be your host for the day, Palladium Moores, as we tackle this giant. That's right, it's Final Fantasy VII. No, not the HD remake, that's not out yet, but the original Final Fantasy VII. The quick and the dirty. It's a 9.5 out of 10. It features some amazing combat, a great storyline, fantastic graphics for the time, and memorable characters, as well as a great soundtrack. Unfortunately, it does have a few minor glitches, some translation errors, and a terrible ending. And that's it for that. If that's all you were here for, then well, take it easy. Now for the rest of you, buckle up and let's hit the road. First thing I'm going to talk about is combat. I'll cover everything else later, but I'm covering this because honestly, this is the third time I've done this video, and for some reason, the second time, I forgot to talk about combat. So now I'm going to do that before I forget. This is some of the best combat in an RPG ever for a number of reasons. Everything just flows together so well. Materia is the biggest reason for this. Materia and its ability to let you customize your characters and their combat styles. Now, there are pros and cons to using Materia. A lot of them take away stats in order to make you better at something else, or just allow you to do things, which makes sense. But it all flows together so well that it just... Once you really start to collect Materia and you can adjust what it does, adding things like absorbing hit points, absorbing magic points, adding additional attacks, adding other things you can do, adding stats, or statuses, sorry. It just... Really, they made it to where... If you can imagine it with a Materia, you can probably do it. Final attack with Farragut? Sure, why not? Let's go out in a blaze of glory. No pun intended. And it worked so well, and then each of the characters had their own individual stats, but you did not necessarily have to go by those. The only thing that really defined characters, aside from their weapons, were their limit breaks, which was important. Everyone had their own set of unique limit breaks, and there were a lot of them. You got to choose between them, and each level of limit break gave you two options, except for the final option, which... Let's be honest, for those options, those were just either nukes, or massive combinations of things that had come before them in Aerith's case. Aerith, you know what I mean. Alright, now graphics. Let's talk about this for a second, because for anyone who is either born past this point or who's too young at this point, won't remember, but these graphics were absolutely amazing for the time. They were stellar. They were fantastic. They were absolutely awesome. Not just the... okay, look. A lot of the stuff on the overworld is a little blocky, but that was still pretty amazing for the time. But combat graphics and FMVs, this stuff we had not seen anything like at the time. This was around the time Metal Gear Solid came out, so we would see stuff like that. But still, it was hard to match what they did here, especially the FMVs. It was just so amazing. Obviously, by today's standards, it's no longer that. But we will at least get to see how they handle things in the new HD remake. Gameplay, graphics, characters. Characters are all great. The characters are all unique, they're distinct, they all have their own personalities, and they all develop throughout the course of the game in one way or another. I was trying to go through my head to see if I missed someone who didn't develop, and they all do. Barring maybe one character who doesn't for reasons. Spoiler reasons you probably already know, but I'm trying to avoid. Now, I hear a lot of times Cloud is called emo, and he's not emo. For some reason, Kingdom Hearts had this weird, broody version of him, and everyone thinks that's Cloud, and that's not Cloud. Cloud was introverted and antisocial at first, but there were a couple of reasons for that. Also, please don't mind my cat meowing in the background. Simon just likes to go outside and chew on grass. No, not because he's sick. Simon's just a little special. Anyway, continuing onward, Cloud also had other reasons for why he acted the way he did. Things you don't find out until later in the plot. But he is never at any point during the game emo. I just want to clear that up right now. But anyway, yeah, no, each of the characters goes through a lot of character development. Not necessarily a lot, I take that back, that's exaggeration. But each of the characters does go through their own character development, even the optional characters. Which is another thing, this game featured two really cool optional characters. Or one not so cool one if you don't like having your stuff stolen. Never minded it, but it might be a thing for you. The sound on this was great. It had some of the best combat music, some very gentle, lulling tones when you're in towns and when you're in the overworld, and it also featured One Winged Angel, which is probably the most intense final boss music ever. It's pretty close to Laughing Mad, which is in Final Fantasy VI, which we'll cover later. But yeah, no, the sound was absolutely great. Sound, graphics, characters, combat... Story. The story is really good. The story has been called cliche at this point, but the thing is, it started most of those cliches. Not all of them. It did take a couple. But for the most part, it was the beginning of a lot of those things, and it did them really well. Couple of twists, couple of absolutely mind-fucky things. Pardon my English, but yeah. But still, overall, it was very well done. Now, I'm probably going to contradict myself on that here in a second. I had to think of the word. Sorry about the pause there, guys. That was me going, what's the word? Finally got it. Alright, on to the cons. Yeah, the translation's a little bit rough at points, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. It's just an occasional line here and there. People always bring up the example of this guy are sick, which is the first one you encounter. But it's also one of the only ones that happened. Quality control just missed us as they were going over it. For the most part, everything is very well translated. This was actually one of the better translations at the time. I'm actually torn in my brain thinking about whether this or 6 did a better job of translating, but I think this did. Hesitant question mark. Alright, now there are a couple of bugs that the game has. Most of them you really have to go looking for them, but if you do, then a couple of them can mess up your game. Finally, the big thing that brings it down. I was almost tempted to bring it down further because of it, and that's the ending to the game. Holy hell, Square, what were you thinking? That's not even an ending. That's just a very abrupt, oh yeah, well, I mean, the game's over. Congratulations. And I'm trying to take it easy on spoilers because the HD remake is coming out pretty soon, and people who haven't played the game originally may pick that up, so I don't want to give too much away. Alright, and that's about it. That's about the long and the short of it. I can't think of anything else about the game that I really need to discuss. It's a very solid game. It was a great game for the time. It was absolutely amazing. And it brought the PlayStation into the limelight, and Metal Gear Solid back in the day. I think there was one more in the triad that really helped to shape the PlayStation in its future. But yeah, no. And really, as someone who has played every Final Fantasy from Final Fantasy 1, and as much of the order as we could here in the States, it was a great entry into the series. Final Fantasy VI really started the highlight of the wonder years for Final Fantasy, but 7 really brought it forth to people who weren't even gamers at the time, or weren't even RPGers. So yeah, I think it deserves its place in history. Alright, that's all I got for you. Thank you guys very much for joining me. If you liked it, then there's the like button. I would not mind if you poked it, and if you'd like to see more, well, that's what the sub's for. Thank you guys very much, and I will be seeing you.